Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Kevin Bednowski. I'm the head coach over at Riverside and also work in the travel world as well. And I am joined by two awesome guests. One is so that there's I'll let you figure out what the difference is between the three of us, other than that I'm bald and they're not, but they're state champions and I'm not. So first, we'd like to welcome Olivia Valbach, who is a reigning state champion, just an awesome person and a great player. She plays at Stonebridge High School, and she is not only the reigning state champion, but the reigning 5A Player of the Year to help us give a player's perspective. So, Liv, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And of course, one of my friends and mentors and greatest people on the face of the planet, the head coach over at Bishop O'Connell and the founder of the Virginia Glory, Coach Susie Williamson. Thanks for joining.
A pleasure and an honor to be with you guys also. This is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So what we're going to try to do today for everybody is mostly everyone here is most likely in the 7th or 8th grade. And, you know, whether you're maybe a rising freshman or rising 8th grader, but you probably were signed up potentially to play in a middle school program. And unfortunately, obviously, because of what we got going on with coronavirus, you weren't able to do that. So I'm sure a lot of you are still practicing at home and trying to do what you can with a tee and a bow net and all that kind of good stuff. And that's awesome. And playing catch with maybe your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. So that's all great stuff. But what we wanted to talk a little bit about today was how you prepare and what to expect when you get to high school. So even if you're a rising 8th grader, it's still something you can kind of get your mind to. And if you're currently finishing up your 8th grade year and getting ready to go into high school next year, what you can expect. And this has nothing to do with Riverside or Bishop O'Connell or Stonebridge or any school specific stuff. It's more just based on experiences that we've had either coaching or playing, and enabling you to give you little pearls of wisdom to help you get prepared and prep for the high school level. The baseball guys do this all the time, and they have camps where they do the prep camp and all that kind of stuff. So we're trying to bring a virtual prep camp to you online. So if you have questions, we'd love for you to put them in the chat box, and I'll sort of keep an eye on that as we go. So you guys can put your questions there, and we'll get to those if you have specific questions. But so first we wanted to talk a little bit about the physical side. We'll get to the physical side, the mental side, communication, a whole bunch of topics. But let's first start talking about the physical side. So Liv, tell me a little bit, if you can remember. Liv's a graduating senior. So if you can remember 4 years ago, a little more than 4 years ago, what were some of the things that you were thinking about that were different from, let's say, the travel ball world or the club world or even the house league world versus when you got to high school? What were some of those things that you were sort of thinking about as you kind of entered the 9th grade?
Entering the 9th grade, I think physically, I knew that I needed to be strong and I needed to be ready to work hard always. When you get there, you have a lot of upperclassmen to look up to, and so I knew that I was ready to put in all the work that they were putting in, physically and mentally.
Great. So prior to, and I know you were a workout fiend, and I know you're good at all that kind of stuff, but had you really been in the gym on a regular basis with a team before? Like, was that new to you?
That was new to me.
Right. Yep. So again, sort of working out in it. Now, I know a lot of you guys that are on the call right now, you may have a personal trainer. You may go to Performance Edge or working out at the gym or things like that. But this is a different concept because it's not one-on-one. It's small teams, it's small groups, it's maybe early in the morning or right after school at night. So Coach Susie, can you talk a little bit about how your program prepares when you bring in a whole new group of people on the physical side from a training perspective?
I would say typically the high school player is not prepared for the amount of throwing that happens. So the biggest thing is to make sure your arm is prepared and doing some type of actually dedicated intentional throwing program, because throwing much more than you ever had before, and it's again every day. So also need to remind again coaches as well that even when you're doing, let's say not a throwing drill, that the drills that you're doing are a lot of throwing. So particularly at the beginning of the season, have to be very careful. But any player that really is intentional with preseason, working out, working on the throwing, hopefully the coach is helping with that as well. That will be huge for you, because if your arm is sore, the only thing you can do is rest it, and then you're not on the field. So I'd say throwing is huge.
Yeah. So you both bring up a good point, and that sort of segue into time management a little bit, because Coach Susie, you talked about, doing this every day. Now, again, I know a lot of you guys that are on the call in 7th and 8th grade, you might be saying, oh, well, I practice 2 or 3 days a week, and I go to my trainer and I throw with my dad and all that kind of stuff. But we're talking about something that's very, very different, in that you are going to go to school all day long. Then depending on where you go to school, so if you're a Loudoun County kid at 403 or 404, you get out of school and you change your clothes and you head right to the field. And you may have just had a test. You may have just had, I got to get that homework done because it's due tomorrow. And now you're worried, you've got other things going on in your life, where before, kind of in the travel world maybe, or the house league world, it was kind of like a pretty, manageable time, right? It was on your schedule. You kind of made it work. It was sort of, now your life is being upset completely. So what Coach Susie's talking about is this regimented understanding of being able to control your arm and being able to work with that on an ongoing basis, 6 days a week. We practice 6 days a week, Saturday mornings included. So, and I know a lot of high schools do that. So Liv, how was that transition for you, getting into something where you had to go to school all day long, and then you were doing that every single day at practice?
I think the biggest thing for me was creating good habits. In middle school, I never had to practice as often as we do in high school, so I would always find time to get all my homework done easily. And in high school, you go straight from school to practice, and then you come home and you have to eat and shower and get all your homework done before the next day. So it's really important to prioritize your homework and make sure that you get it done as soon as possible, and try to get ahead on the weekends if you're able to. That was definitely a big help for me.
That's great advice. That's awesome. I mean, getting into good habits now is really going to help propel you. And the high school softball season, or any high school sports season, is a grind. So Coach Susie, talk a little bit about that grind. Talk a little bit about, when does it start? How does it start? And what can kids be looking forward to as they get into this high school world?
I would say when you are first planning what you're going to be doing for those high school months, is be extremely fluid. You need to be prepared for, normally you practice after school, but now there was a rain out and your gym time is at 7. So when you are first getting into it, the schedule can change. We had times, and even we're getting news at noon that we're not going to play. And so you try to, as a coach, set those things up and communicate, like, here's our A, B, C and plan. But I tell the players and parents, for the next 3 months, it's fluid. And you need to be able to adjust right away, and try not to set things in stone, because that just creates unnecessary stress, like when you aren't able to do that. So keep things so that you can adjust as needed.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are times for me that, yeah, you're right, exactly. It's we're not so sure what the rain's going to look like or what's going to happen. So I may text the team and say, hey, look, always prepare for indoor and outdoor this week, because it looks like we have rain every single day. So you got to prepare cleats, you got to prepare, sneakers. And our gym time might be right after school, but it might be at 8 o'clock at night, because while they're in season, right, it's let's say it's preseason and we're working in February, well, basketball might still be going on, right? So the gym might be occupied by the girls varsity basketball team, so we can't get in there. So flexibility is important. which now sort of leads as a great segue into communication. And sort of, Coach, you mentioned a little bit about that, and I did as well. I'll just give you my perspective, and then Coach, you can, and then Liv, maybe you can give it from a player's perspective about how you like to be communicated to the best. But for me, and this kind of goes out to the parents as well as the players, but when you reach high school, there is less communication with your parents. It's just the definition of being in high school. Whether it's your teachers, the administration, your coaches, there's more direct communication between, for me, coach and player. And because everything is so fluid, as Coach Susie mentioned. So, I need to be able to communicate. My responsibility is to communicate with players. So I always tell parents, look, if you're hoping for this week in Riverside High School, softball world, that email doesn't come. Because your daughter will have all the information that she needs. So if you need to get it, you just get it from her. You don't need to really get it from me. So, and it's also teaching life skills about that responsible interaction between player and coach, adult and young woman, and things like that. So there's a lot of benefits to creating that open communication directly with players. Coach, how do you sort of see that and handle that as well?
I try to find the way that the players like to be communicated the best. So we'll use a remind, because there's privacy issues and stuff like that. So they want remind. I still do emails. If they wanted Instagram, I would do one of those. People like Twitter. So it's my job is to find out what is the best way to reach them, because I think that is one of my responsibilities. It's not what I like, it's what they like. Because again, just like even when we're on the field with our signs, it's communicate. It's not exactly the way I do it, and things change. So it's just having some of those discussions, and that's kind of the fun part of the year as well, as we're figuring out, okay, this team, how are we going to roll? What's our personality? So that's kind of fun, but pretty much via the phone, remind. Yep. And that's usually how I do it.
We're gonna get back to you in a second so you can start thinking about the answering your why question and the joy question. So we're gonna get back to you in a second on that, because you started to touch on it, but I want to hold you back a little bit. Liv, through the last 4 years, how is it that you've enjoyed being communicated to with your coaches? And how do you feel like kids are typically absorbing information right now that they can get quickly and that it's pretty fluid and understanding?
I've enjoyed using the reminds. Coach Rice sends those out a lot, and it's fast and it's quick, and we're able to get information quickly, which has been good. I just think it's important to remember as a player that it's your responsibility to get in touch with the coach sometimes, and that you as a player need to take responsibility and not your parents. And that kind of started for me in high school. And I feel like I've gained a lot of knowledge from learning that.
Great. That's so, ladies, for you that are on the call, players, that this is exactly why Liv is here, right? Liv is here to give you that perspective exactly from the player. And she's not only a stellar athlete and an unbelievable softball player, but she's a fantastic young woman and is going to do fantastic things. For those of you that don't know, and she's very humble and modest, she would never sort of say it, but she's again, she's the reigning 5A player of the year last year, a state champion, and is going to go on next year and play at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. So we're very proud, and I could probably embarrass her and throw up that picture again, Liv, of back in when you were 8 years old or 9 years old, but I won't do that. So we're very thankful to have her.
Well, thank you.
So let's transition, because what you just talked about, Liv, was about accountability, right? You talked about personal accountability. So how does that also, not with communication with the coaches, but how does that work with your teammates and on the field? Talk a little bit about the accountability, and it doesn't much matter, right? You played varsity, you were a varsity starter as a freshman. You've been a varsity starter for 4 years. So you came in and there was a level of accountability even as a freshman. Talk a little bit about how that plays itself out on the field with your teammates.
I think personal accountability really plays out on the field when you're out there and you're just practicing every day and you need to give 100% all the time. And it does get challenging and you get tired, but you have to continue to push yourself and give 110% all the time. And also pushing your teammates to be the best that they can be. That's also really important. But yeah, just giving your all the time.
So we're going to come back to you. So you started to talk about the leadership question. We're going to talk about the leadership question here in a bit. But Coach Susie, talk a little bit about accountability and how that sort of manifests itself on the field between players.
It really helps when you have some senior, junior leadership and they're able to mentor the younger players. So you guys coming in, so that really is a huge component as far as any program. And you just go and you're just like a little sponge and you're just drinking things in and you're asking questions and being curious and engaging whichever way you do. So when somebody thinks you care about what they are doing, then it's amazing. You've already created a little connection and they'll be there to help you. So I encourage you to ask questions with the older players and don't wait for them to try to make that connection. You go and start doing that, and that door will be open a lot more quickly for you, and feel a little more comfortable. But it just creates a cool energy and vibe.
Yeah. So my version of accountability for even the youngest of players is about what you can control yourself, right? So you can control your body language. You can be accountable for yourself. You can control your body language. So have you ever heard of the term, there are palms up players or palms up people, right? Like, wasn't me, like, not me, right? So that's we generally don't like palms up people, in our lives. Forget the softball factor for a second. So we want people that take accountability. So go and seek out opportunities to be accountable to your teammates. There are plenty of players, as coaches, and Coach Susie, we'll come back to you here in a second, but that look at all aspects. We look at the way you walk into the dugout. We look at the way you go shag fly balls. We look at the way you pick up balls when we say, hey, it's time for pickup. Who's out there scurrying around trying to get them all done in 30 seconds, right? So those are all factors of personal accountability. And we don't let anybody tell you, maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this, but there are coaches play favorites. Okay. I'm here to tell you coaches play favorites. And the favorites may not be the definition of what you think a favorite is, but a favorite is somebody that's busting their butt all the time. That's a favorite, right? They're out there doing their thing. So I like people that are going to go out there and take personal responsibility. They're the ones like Liv that have gone out from a very young age and gone out and worked and done what she said, which is 110%. So Liv, I just almost called you Sid because you got blonde hair and you look like my daughter. So Liv, talk a little bit about how you've attempted over the course of your 4 years to motivate your teammates and hold them accountable for the high standards that you saw for the Stonebridge team.
I think just going hard during every play and talking up your teammates when they're taking ground balls or they're shagging balls or hitting, cheering them on, and when they fall down and they don't do well, pick them up and show them that you're there for them. And of course, vice versa. When you make a mistake, having them pick you up is always good too.
Coach, talk a little bit about, we're gonna transition to one of maybe your favorite topics, and understanding why are you playing this game? Why do you play? What's your joy? You and I were on a Zoom the other night, and Coach was talking about a joy meter, right? And let's talk a little bit about the enthusiasm for the game and what a young player can bring to a new team, right? A new environment. What can a young player bring and show and understanding their why and their joy?
One of the most fun things for me is starting out is each player has actually a different reason that they're playing. So where I was previous to O'Connell, none of those girls had any desire to play in college. Some of them had never even played before. These are in varsity just because that was the talent pool. So you had some girls that played rec ball, maybe two that had played travel ball, and then some that had never played before. So I knew that they did not love the game as much as I do, because 24/7. And I knew that we had all different starting points. So what could it be that could be that common thread that could have them bind together, have us bind together? And it was be your best. It was be my best. Not be the best, because if I'm trying to be the best, I'm competing and going against my teammate or somebody else. But if I work on being my best, then I will be the best teammate, the best sister, the best friend, the best daughter, going on and on. And who doesn't want to work on being their best? So I use that every year because of just the mishmash of individuals. But that was the coolest thing, to see how they would come together. So if you just focus on being your best in anything and everything that you do, pretty amazing things will happen. And comparison is the thief of joy. So if you just try to be your best, then you'll be a great teammate, and all those things will happen. And then you'll have that common thing, because we're trying to be our best for each other. So,
And being your best is a great way to think about things, because there are some times when your best is 75%. So sometimes that's the best that you have for that given moment or that given day. So what we ask as coaches is be the best 75% person you can be at that moment. Okay. So Liv, are there days when you weren't 100%?
Yeah, definitely.
So in those moments, what did you do? What was your mentality? What did you try to do? What were the things around you that either helped or hurt you to in those situations?
I think keeping a positive mindset definitely helped me, and my teammates, they definitely played a big role in picking me up when I had those days where I wasn't playing as well as I could.
So this brings up a great transition, Liv, to the difference between, you've played travel ball, obviously, and even rec ball back in the day for a long time. And let's talk a little bit about the teammate difference between playing in high school over the course of 4 years and playing, on the travel side. There are differences, right? So, you've created this, the Bulldogs, right, have created this little thing over the course of 4 years that you've been there. How is that different, and what has it meant to you?
I think the Stonebridge team, we've been really close from the beginning, and you spend a lot of time with your teammates at school. So you get to become close friends with them, and playing on the field with them is just like more time that you get to spend together, which is really great. So we're more of like a family, I guess. I feel like the Stonebridge team. Yeah, we're all always there for each other and willing to help whatever way we need to.
Yeah, you'll find a common thread, and Coach, you can weigh on this as well, is that there are many differences, and forget talent level and competition. Put that aside for a second. The notion of being in the high school environment or your school environment is truly understanding this notion that you're playing for something that's bigger, right? It's not really about you. It's something that there's this school pride. Like when you go to the football games, right? When you go to the Stonebridge football games, you're all in, right? For the powder blue, right? You're all in all the time. So, this feeling, you have this feeling of pride, this feeling of joy, this feeling of, man, this is more than my mom and dad in the stands. There's something else bigger going on here. So Liv, can you talk a little bit about that in the game environment or even in the practice environment when you're that feeling? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a really good feeling knowing that you're playing for your school and you're representing something that means a lot to so many people. Yeah, and you're just fighting for your school and your community and your teammates coming together for the community. I think that's really important.
Yeah. So Coach, talk about Coach Murphy's concept, right? Tradition never graduates. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Uh, uh, yeah, well, talk about having to follow in a tradition. At O'Connell, the most storied program that was put together by Coach Tommy Orndorff. There's nothing that grabs my heart any more than standing with my team and hearing the national anthem. There's just this little moment in time when you're all there before the game and that song is played, and it's just one of the greatest feelings. And I'll even, if I'm at another sporting event and I hear that, I still get that little ugh in my heart. But when it's with your team at that moment, and then it's play ball, it's magical. I actually had stepped down from high school coaching, and it was August, and I'm practicing with our travel team, and we were at Herndon High School, and Herndon was playing a field hockey game. And all of a sudden we stopped when the national anthem started to play. And that feeling just came rushing back. So you'll know what I'm talking about when you're on that field and you hear it. So, and it's interesting, if you talk to a college coach, they'll say the high school experience is much closer to what you would have in college versus travel ball. Because as you were saying, Coach B, there's a school pride. You're representing something truly that's on the front of the jersey and school. So, but yeah, I think back to the national anthem on the team and hearing that. So
yeah. You said exactly what I was going to say, which was in speaking with college coaches, right? They really understand that the high school experience is important because it's very similar in that relationship that they have with that little, like Liv said, that little family. I don't know if Liv knows this or has it on the calendar or the schedule or not, but a week from tomorrow would have been the final Riverside Stonebridge home game, and I'm by nature not really an emotional person, as far as I don't wear my emotions on my sleeve too much. But I tell you what, next Wednesday night at around 6:05, I would have been a tear would have been streaming down my eye, knowing that was the last time that I was going to see Liv on a high school softball field. So, however that panned out, that game, there would have been a lot of hugs there. So I'm getting a little emotional about it now, but it's been that's what this means. That's what it can mean for you if you embrace it. If you embrace this notion of family, if you embrace this notion of team, if you embrace the notion that you are playing with these friends and people that you've become friends with, that live in your community, you see them in the grocery store, you're in the line at Starbucks together, whatever it is, these are people that you see every single day of your life. And you try to embrace that as early as you can and control what you can do to make the impact that you have. That's the joy, right? That's the joy. For me, that's why I do this. And that's why I love to see all of you guys all the time, whether I see a lot of you guys at 643, I see you at tournaments, I see you at, last year's middle school, whatever it might be. It's fun. And that's why Coach and I do these things. So, guys, if you have questions, we've got a couple more topics, and then I thought we'd open it up for about 15 minutes for questions. So if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll get to your questions here. We're talking about you can talk about practice, you can talk about tryouts, you can ask about physicals. I mean, anything you need to ask, you can ask. And whether it's a player question or a coach question or a programmatic question, we'd be happy to answer for you. So let's talk a little bit about the approach. You know, what's the approach, Liv, of what do you think the mental approach of an 8th grader, let's say a rising freshman coming in, probably a little nervous, right? Probably a little uncharted territory. Talk to them, give some advice about what they should be thinking and how they should be sort of, some advice for them.
I would say to definitely keep an open mindset. You're going to learn so many different things from different people going into high school, and it's important to absorb as much as you can. Just be willing to learn new things and don't be closed off to new ideas, or if you do something a different way, make sure that you're willing to try it the way that your new coach tells you to try it, or a different player, an older player. Just keep an open mindset.
Awesome. Coach, what about you?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Like I said before, be a little sponge, and don't be afraid to fail. That's the biggest thing, is just go for it. That's the most delight. You don't need to be the best player out there, but if you're going out there and have a teachable spirit and are trying things, that is the most fun to watch and work with and be with. So just go for it. Embrace the struggle is one of the mantras. And when you fall down and trying something new, that's how you get better. That's how you grow. And so embracing that kind of thing will really take you places you never knew you could go. So
agreed. We don't, no coach really, I mean, I'm generalizing, but I know both Coach Susie and I, we don't expect perfection. Goodness gracious, we're not perfect by any stretch anyway. So we don't expect perfection. We expect you being your best at that particular moment that you have to give. And we expect that you do it with the joy and the love for the game and for each other that you can bring every single day, because those are things you can control. So by no means do we expect perfection. Liv doesn't, well, she does throw 70% strikes, but so that's pretty darn good. But
I got a Liv story.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so she's probably being nice. She doesn't remember. So again, where I was before, we were just plod along and okay, we're making regionals, but every time we would make regionals, this is before everybody got in and they did the realignment, we would have the great fortune of being matched up against Stonebridge. So yeah, we would go, and she's like smiling. The score would be like 20-1, but hey, you keep going, bringing the juice. But really fun watching her and her teammates play, because you could really tell they enjoyed each other and had that bond that you were talking about. And it was great, again, going against Coach Rice. But yeah, I remember, Liv, you didn't think I but it was good. So, but
I'm trying to find this picture real quick and try to embarrass Liv, but I can't find it. Oh my gosh. Liv, I think you were 8, maybe 9. How old were you, Liv, back in Pride days?
I think 9.
Oh, I found it. I found it. Oh, hold on. This is going to be good. Certified Zoom Gold, Coach Susie, right here.
Certified Zoom Gold.
Hold on. Let me share my screen. Oh, wait, why is it not working? Oh, it's not working. Oh.
You'll just have to tweet it out.
I will tweet it out, but it's a great picture. It's a great photo of all these great kids that played back in the day when they were 8 or 9 years old. All right, so let's talk a little bit, again, put some questions in the chat. Oh yes, here we go. There's a question. Hello, Caitlin, how are you? What does a typical off season look like, and when do tryouts typically start? Awesome question. So some of this is private school and public school are going to be a little bit different. I can give the public school VHSL answer. And then as far as tryouts go, and then coach, you can do that. And then Liv, why don't you chime in as well when we get to you on preparing for tryouts as well. Okay. So in Loudoun County and in Virginia, tryouts are typically the third week of February. Okay. So this year, I believe they were the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of February. And yes, I said 3 days. Those are required by Virginia High School League, the Virginia High School League, VHSL, that we have a requirement of 3 days of tryouts. My particular tryouts, and coach can talk about hers in a second, but my particular tryouts are broken down into 3. Now, this is also assuming, don't forget, we talked earlier about being inside or outside, right? Because in February, weather is clearly a factor. Now, I will say this year, we were awesome. 2 out of the 3 days we got outside, which was fantastic, which we never had done before. So my tryouts typically are organized this way. One day is based on metrics. So we do all kinds of agility testing, strength testing, and all the metric numbers, right? Overhand velocity, T exit speed. We do vertical jump. We do broad jump. We do 60 time, 3-cone shuttle drill. So anything you can put a stopwatch on or a clock on or measure, we do that on a particular day. Then there's another day is an offensive day. Well, we'll basically just hit, and that will be hitting live as well as hitting, try to do machine, but I know most kids can't stand machine. I can't really stand the machine either. I can't hit off it either. So, but I can't hit off Liv either. So, I mean, it's one or the other. So, and then we'll do a defensive day. So that's typically how I break up my tryouts. So let's go through the tryout thing first, then we'll come back to the off-season question. Go ahead, coach.
Same thing, 3 days. Sometimes I'd have a question like, do I have to go to all 3 days? Like, yes, you do. So it's not like choose one out of the days, it's all 3 days. If you're playing let's say you're playing basketball and your season might go into the tryout season. So those are just communications with the coaches. Everybody will do things, again, a little differently. So if you're doing the green days and preparing things, and I know you get off season, then you'll know. So again, it's just communicating, connecting with the coach way ahead of time, and then that will make you feel more comfortable too. But it's the 3 days, and as coach was saying, it could be all different times. But hopefully that has been set way ahead of time to help you plan as best as possible. But yeah, we're 3 days as well, and in the WCAC it's always February 20th. So it could even be on a Sunday. We could do it the day before, but we can't do like the 19th and say. But we're always February 20th, whatever day that happens of the week it falls on. That's our start date.
Good. All right, Liv, talk about from a player's perspective, that sort of that lead up, right? The lead up to tryouts and then going through tryouts, and try to think of it back 4 years from when you did it, 4 years ago.
I think leading up to tryouts, it's important to be both mentally and physically ready. So physically making sure that you're hydrated and you're eating the right foods. And then mentally making sure that you have an open mindset and you're positive going in. Knowing that you will make mistakes, and it's important to just stay positive and keep giving 100%. And then during the tryout, it's just important that you give your all the whole time, and you stay positive and you work with your potential teammates, and you cheer them up. And that's probably the most important thing, I think.
Can you give a couple of examples, Liv, of what it means to give the 100% at a tryout? What does that look like for a player?
Diving for ground balls, running as fast as you can, running out ground balls, even if you're going to get out, most likely. Swinging 100%. And I know for me, pitching, it's giving my all every pitch. And that gets tiring when you're in the 6th and 7th innings of games, but you have to remember that you have to give 100% in order to be your best.
Yeah. So just a couple things to add about tryouts. You know, coaches, again, it's something I mentioned earlier. Coaches look at everything when it comes to tryouts. You know, we measure, at least I do, we measure attitude. We look at the nonverbals. We look at your body language. We look at, were you the kid that helped set up the field? Were you the one that grabbed the L screen and brought it into even if you put it in the wrong spot, doesn't really even matter at that point. Did you take the initiative to go do that kind of stuff? Were you one of the first ones to grab a rake when we were done? Yes, you heard me correctly. You probably have never had to rake a field before because you were at some tournament somewhere in Maryland and they did it for you in between games. We take care of our own fields. We put the bases away. You know, all of that stuff is a new part of this experience that, again, teaches you accountability. So are you that kind of kid? Are you that kind of player that goes out there and takes the initiative to do things that are responsible, like being responsible over the top young adults? That's what we look for. And we're measuring all those things. Coach, you have anything to add on that?
One of the things that it can be tough because depending on what school you go to, their program strength might be way off the charts and they're just really stacked and they have a bunch of seniors, juniors, whatever it might be. Or you might be at another school that maybe not so many girls play softball. So the likelihood of being on varsity, because again, even though you're freshmen, that's what you think your definition is, did I make it or not? So I had my travel team and some of the girls went to Robinson. And at that time, Robinson was like always in the state. And probably one of my top players, she didn't make varsity, she made JV. While probably one of my least skilled players, she went to another school, and I won't say them because she went to another school, the program wasn't as strong, and she ended up being starting shortstop and batting third. So again, comparison is the thief of joy. You are going to have those kinds of things going on. And I'm not going to say it's going to be easy because, again, your little friend, little Susie over there is here, there, and you see everybody flashing the thing. I made varsity and wow, okay, that's great. Someone else made JV. You're part of the program. You both put it out there. You both laid it on the line. And that is fabulous. That's absolutely fabulous. So it's hard not to get caught up in that. So do the best you can, but everybody that's all, there's value in every single thing. You each went out there and put it on the line. Somebody just happened to be maybe more fortunate to where they went to school. So well said.
Well said. And yeah, again, don't compare yourself to other folks that you've been, playing with maybe on your travel side or in your club side. Don't do that to yourself. It's only gonna wrap yourself all tied up and quite frankly, put undue stress and pressure on yourself that's might make you not perform the way you thought you might be able to perform. So it's really not healthy for you to do that. And again, Liv sort of made a great point with having a positive mindset. You do you the best you can, right? And that will take you far in life. Forget softball, that'll take you very far in life beyond what you do on the field. One other technical note about tryouts, and then we'll talk about off season for a second. Coach had mentioned about if you're in season, for instance, if you're a basketball player and you're making a deep run into the playoffs, well, clearly that's your priority, right? We know you're in season. That's your priority. If you can't make an off season, a workout, or you can't make a day of tryouts because of that, totally get it. Be a multi-sport athlete. Love it, love it, love it. Go do it. Enjoy that experience. Have at it. The other thing that goes along with that is if you are injured and can't participate in a particular tryout, that's okay as well. If you have a medical situation that you're not able to try out on those particular pre-prescribed days, you are due and you are you have the right to 3 days worth of tryouts. We will just find the right time for you to do that. Gracie DeBerg 5 years ago, she started the season with, in a cast. Well, she was clearly, we were hoping she was going to make the team, right? So it just took us a month, but we had 3 days of tryouts after a month, and then she was ready to roll. So, it's just one of those little nuances. I don't want anybody to get upset if in fact they figure out, oh my gosh, I have a sprained ankle on the day of tryouts and I can't run. Well, we'll figure it out. It's okay.
Hey, Coach B, and do you want to also go over the actual things that they need to do as far as their grades and stuff like that?
Yes. Yeah, I have two other additional topics. One's academics and one is social media. So we'll touch on those in a second after we talk to the off-season program. So why don't you kick it off, Coach, and talk a little bit about what your typical off-season program looks like?
As opposed to green days in the public school, we're able to have training. There's restrictions and it's more on size. I can't really be more than 6 in scrimmaging. So it's a little freer than it was when I was at public school. But it's just a way, again, to start connecting. And I can't encourage you enough to try to participate in those. Now, I do understand too that sometimes it can be a challenge because if your travel ball team is practicing on Wednesday night and that's the night that the coach has the green day, well, I guess you're also kind of starting to figure out some of those things in life where you need to actually talk to the coach and both of them and come up with a plan. So, and if you do that, you're already a couple of steps ahead of the game with forging that connection relationship with the coach. So, and I encourage you to find this out. I mean, be proactive. So in fall, just reach out to a coach and say, hey coach, green days, making sure I'm on your radar. And so then you can start planning for those kinds of things and get into the communication loop. Because sometimes there was players they showed up the day of tryouts and I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, which was great, but we want to help you as much as possible to prepare you. So, and that's what our job is, to help you. We're doing this for you. So communicate with that coach. You can even doing it now. Some might be even having things, as Coach B was saying earlier, in the summer, little camps. So.
Yep. So our particular off-season program has been pretty formulaic over the last couple of years. And what we do is especially for the rising freshman group, we don't do anything for the first 2 to 3 weeks in September. So these quote unquote green days, it might be a new term to you that Coach had mentioned earlier. What a green day is a coach-led out of season practice. Okay. And we're allowed in public school in Loudoun County, we're allowed a certain amount of those. It gets debated every single year as whether they should be allowed or not allowed and how many and all that kind of stuff. So I'll bore you. I won't bore you with those details, but nonetheless, my particular program, because I know that especially these rising freshmen are so brand new to their eyes and their heads, their eyes are wide open and their heads are spinning about being in high school. We don't do anything softball related for the first 3 weeks of September, because I want you to engulf yourself in being a high school kid at that point, understanding, oh my gosh, my history class is over there, but oh, where does the cafeteria, and you're learning things for the very first time. So I don't want to add to that stress and inundate you with something with softball that's not going to happen until February and September. So we don't do anything for the first 3 weeks. Once about the third week of September hits, we do a total of 8 outdoor green days, weather permitting. Now, I don't do 20, which I could do, but I do 8. And I'm not overloading it. Also knowing that a lot of you guys are still playing in another season, maybe your travel ball season, or you're playing in a fall rec league season or something like that. So you're out there doing stuff. But again, as Coach mentioned, this is an opportunity just to start the relationship. It's an opportunity for me to get to know you, to get to know your name, get to know, what interests you, get to know how you're doing in school, get to know if you have any brothers and sisters, get to know what your birthday is, all those things, not just what position you play and if you're right-handed or left-handed. I'll learn that eventually. Trust me. It doesn't take me very long to figure that kind of stuff out. I want to know a little bit more about who you are as a person. So we use those 8 days, weather permitting, and then we do nothing in the month of November, 0. Because again, you are probably just come off your fall season, whatever that may look like. You've probably just come off your fall season. So we do nothing in November. And then in December, we start up in the weight room. And our particular program, we go twice a week at 6:30 in the morning before school. And we work out with the girls lacrosse team as well. And then we'll start weaving in, once January starts, we'll start weaving in hitting, and we'll do about an 8 to 10 week hitting session in the evenings, most likely in the gym. And then that leads up to the 3rd week of February, which is tryouts. So that's my off season. Everybody's got a little bit of a different nuance to it as far as how often they get together and what they do. But that's typically it. Liv, why don't you talk a little bit about off-season prep from a player's perspective, about how you get your body ready to go for the season?
I think, well, for Stonebridge, we do workouts in the morning in the weight room. And so those are really important to go to in order to get stronger, and to build relationships with your teammates and your coaches, especially just coming in as freshmen. It's really important for you to get to know the coaches and for the coaches to get to know you. And then we do a lot of pitching and catching in the morning, and that's good to get to know. For like me as a pitcher, it's good for my catcher to get to know me and for me to know how my catcher works. And so those are really important to go to as well. But then also working out on your own and hitting off of tee in your garage or something during the winter, or going to pitch and catch with your dad, or taking ground balls, but just making sure that you're always doing something to prepare for when tryouts come up.
Great. Thanks. We had one other question before we get to academics. One other question pop up about how if you're playing travel, can you play, and you're playing travel in the spring and you're a 9th grader, let's say you're a freshman, and can you play both travel and high school simultaneously? So Coach, go ahead. You want to tackle that one first, and then I'll jump in?
Yeah. My personal opinion, doing this since 2002, and they changed the rules. I think you're really playing with fire if you try to play travel ball as a 9th grader, particularly if you're on varsity. You're physical and mentally, like I said, you're going every day. And unlike the other sports, if it's a rain out, then you play the next night. Like everything, it's just like all over the place. And people go, well, geez, I'm used to playing 7 games in a weekend. So like one game a night or 3 games in a week is a lot. And I know you don't understand this, but I know I'm not going to be real popular saying this, but playing 14U ball as a 9th grader, you just need to be mindful. And I know a lot of things shifted towards that with the showcase and stuff, but you need to be careful because your body needs time to recover, both mentally and physically. And then when you're trying to really get out there during the summer, you're broken.
So I'm going to echo Coach's sentiments here. And mind you, I mean, both of us also coach outside of high school as well, and have these aged kids, right? So
I coach 14 in high school. I speak from both sides and coach at high level. So
yeah. So I'm going to echo this, and I'm going to tell you a short story because I did it completely wrong with my son. I was that parent that said, "Oh, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out." And my son was a freshman in high school, and we'll just play a couple of double headers on a Sunday, or and it was bad. I did the wrong thing as a parent. I did the absolute wrong thing. And it didn't take me very long to realize that was wrong. But it's highly discouraged we cannot tell you in Virginia, again, this is public school stuff and it's in the rules. I can't tell you what you can and can't do with your free time. You can do what with it as you see fit. So I can't forbid you from playing travel softball or anything during that. What I can do is say that it can't interfere with your ability to be on this team and participating at this all the scheduled requirements, because there is an attendance requirement. So if you have quote unquote unexcused absences from the team because you've chosen to make the travel ball tournament a priority over the high school team, then there is something to be said. We will have a communication. We will have a discussion about that, but I can't forbid you from doing it. I can highly discourage you, and certainly if you're a pitcher or a catcher, we're super highly discouraging it. You know, I've used Stonebridge as an example. You know, when one of our number ones, we're fortunate to have two number ones, but when Bella Radigan was a freshman and a sophomore, and she's like, oh, you know, can I go work out on Sunday? And we got this thing on Sunday and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Bella, we play Stonebridge Monday night. So no, not a good idea. Not a good idea. And it's not just because we don't want you to wear down and we want you to be there for your team and, you know, all those kinds of things. It's for your own good. This is just not healthy for you to do this at that level, regardless of what maybe mom or dad says or another coach says, or the pressure you might be getting from your other teammates from that travel team or whatever it is. It's just not good for you. So again, Coach and I are on the same page. We're probably not very popular with parents and other coaches that are hearing this, but it is the truth. So Liv, how about you? Have you ever felt like you've been in a situation where you felt not overused, but where you were like, you know, I could have used that day off?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when I started as a freshman, working 6 days a week, it's a lot, and it's a lot on your body. So it's important, at least for me, to take Sundays off. I found that was the one day that I needed to rest my body so I could be ready to come back on Monday working just as hard as I did the week before.
Great. We're going to come right back to you about the so two-part question, Liv, managing your time as it relates to schoolwork in the high school season. And I don't know if Coach Rice does this or not, maybe you can, but how are you, and how are your teammates accountable for this academic standard that you guys have at your particular program?
Well, for us, and for me personally, grades always come first. And so it's important that you put schoolwork first and you make sure that you get all of your schoolwork done. That way you can play softball. And so for me with school, I would go straight from school to practice, and then I'd come home and I'd get as much work as I could done that night, and I would try to get ahead in as many classes as I could. And especially when you start taking the college level courses, it's really important that you get stuff done on time and efficiently, and you're not just rushing to get the assignment done, but you're actually putting in all of your hard work and effort. So that's definitely a big thing.
So what methods do you use to manage your time, Liv, especially during the season? Just curious, do you use your phone? Is it a planner? What are some of the things, what are the tools that you use to keep yourself on track?
I have a planner, and then I like to check things off as I complete them. So I feel like I'm working towards a goal at the end of the day. Okay,
great. Good advice. Coach Susie, talk a little bit about academics and the standard that you have at Bishop O'Connell and some of the things that you do to keep the team accountable.
Well, I'm trying to think with the public school, remind me, you needed to pass 5 subjects?
5 subjects, correct.
So there actually is a technical requirement you need to meet. We would hope you would have higher aspirations than just passing. So again, as Liv was saying, the grades are huge. It's going to make your entire experience just so much better. It lessens the stress of what's going on, learning those time management things. Plus, it just opens so many doors for you. But there's people to help you, and again, conversations, and you don't need to be a Mensa. I mean, everybody has different talents and strengths. So maybe you're not great at taking tests, but it's just having those conversations and communicating. And again, your coach is there to help you as best as possible as you're on this journey and finding your way as a freshman. But do be mindful that there is that actual technical piece with passing those core courses in order to make you eligible. Because what we get, like normally we try to know ahead of time, but then something could fall through the cracks, and then after you are on the team, but again, we try to make that ahead of time, then we get the final eligibility printout. And I just know of people on other teams, it's really sad. And then they have to go back to the player and say, hey, like this part, sorry, you're gonna have to be removed. So, but usually it's not so much softball players. Softball players, then you guys are always the brains, the really high point averages. So I'm
yeah,
sure, but something for you to be aware of.
Yeah. So a couple extra things that I'd like to add to that is one is I meet with all of our players individually throughout the season, and we talk about their goals, obviously, as it relates to the season and the softball side, but we also talk about academics. And then I do make them bring me their report cards as part of, and I've done that for years, even with youth kids back in Little League baseball days and travel softball when they were younger. We've always been cognizant and understanding that academics is a priority. And, we put a huge emphasis on that as far as, again, if you're meeting your expectations and you're being your best you, then it is what it is, right? So if you get a B, that's a B, and that's you, and that's awesome, and then that's perfect. As long as that was your expectation and that was your goal, and that's how you achieved, then that's awesome. So, but we do meet individually to talk about a lot of things, but to academics is certainly a part of that. So understand that that's kind of part and parcel to the program. And I'm sure a lot of other coaches in high school do that also to speak about academics. So one of the final topics that I wanted to touch on for everybody tonight is a kind of a little bit of a hot button. Coach mentioned it a little bit earlier about sort of the difference between, when you made varsity, your immediate thought is to celebrate that on Twitter and Instagram and, Facebook, although you guys don't use Facebook, only old people like us use Facebook. But to throw it out there on Instagram and stuff. And we're not asking you not to celebrate things. Trust me. We want you to celebrate. We want you to be proud and understanding, but understand that there are flip sides to social media. And I'll lead it off with a story, and then we'll kind of go around the horn a little bit here. I was talking to a Division I college coach, and it was talking through some recruiting with some other players. And I just happened to ask her, I said, Coach, what are the top 3 things that get a kid decommitted? Like, what are the top 3 items that say, I'm no longer interested? So I thought that the number one thing was, and this was a high academic school, by the way, high academic school in the Northeast. And I thought the first thing she was going to say was grades, right? If the kid didn't keep up the grades. The first thing she said was, if a kid does something stupid, and especially if they do something stupid on social media, that will get them decommitted real quickly. So now that's at the college level. By the way, second was grades, third, the lowest one, which easily could be the number one, was that they didn't develop physically the way that she thought they were going to develop physically, which was lowest on the totem pole. It was doing something stupid in grades were at the top, and then that was the next one. So we take it seriously in high school as well. So that's why, we want to understand how you're working with social media. We don't want to take it away from you. It's obviously a huge component of the way you guys communicate as human beings, and that's awesome. We want to foster that communication. But again, understand that your personal accountability as it relates to social media is got to be off the charts and pretty high. Coach, you have anything you want to add there?
But I would agree, and hopefully that's just how you would be in person as well. You like things, you retweet things. That's kind of a statement for how you want yourself represented. So it's just being mindful, but I think that's just good practices just to do in just everyday life. So how do you want to represent yourself? And then realize though, you're on a team and it's not really about you anymore. You're representing everybody that wears the school name. That's part of the responsibility now. So if it doesn't matter to you, then don't join the team and just go off, be yourself and have at it. And there you go. But you have a responsibility to your teammates, to your school on how you represent yourself. So
Yeah.
family, how do you honor them?
Liv, you have anything to add on social media at all and how it's used and how it should be used? And
I do have social media, but I think it's important that you just post things that you wouldn't mind your mom and dad seeing, or you wouldn't mind your coaches seeing. I do have my UAB coaches, they follow me on social media, so that's also really important that you know that they're looking at your stuff, but you're just representing yourself. So definitely keep it positive and post things that you wouldn't mind those people see.
Does that count you beating up Chandler? Is that accessible on social media? Is that all right? All right, little brother joke.
Yeah.
It's good. We're going to about ready to wrap up here, but if people have any more questions, there've been a few, throw them in the chat real quick. We're happy to sort of answer some more questions before we get to our final thoughts here. But so just to end things up, if there are no more questions, but feel free to add them in the chat. I'll keep looking over there. Oop. Oh, okay. Hold on. What if you're doing ROTC and softball? Oh, I assume this is like a Loudoun County question, Loudoun County High School. I'm assuming you mean if there's a conflict. Is that accurate? If there's a conflict between the two? I mean, you're making a choice, right? I mean, yeah, okay, yes. So if you're an ROTC or if you're in any other club for that matter, so whether that's ROTC or robotics or, whatever, you have a chorus concert, whatever it is. So again, I see another question come up. Okay. There is once you commit to it, once you make a team, you are committed to that team. And this is a Loudoun County and public school rule. And Coach Susie, you can answer your side of it. But 3 unexcused absences, and that can be for a lot of different things. For instance, if you are in DECA and you go to DECA states, it usually happens literally that first, week or two of the season at the end of February and early March. DECA is a great program. We have kids that are in DECA. I love it. It's an awesome program, but it's technically an unexcused absence. A guitar concert, unexcused absence from the team. I know it sounds weird, but it's kind of just the way it is. Now, I personally am I'm very reasonable person, right? So it doesn't, if that's the only thing you're missing, that, we make it work. But technically we have the right to remove you from a team for more than 3 unexcused absences. And again, whether that's ROTC or a chorus concert or DECA or robotics, or, you're going to do the color run, whatever it is, you're responsible for the National Honor Society color run or whatever it is, those all fall in the same category. Coach, you have any other thoughts on that?
It was pretty simple for me, is when you weren't there, you weren't there. I didn't want to get into judgment on grandma's 90th birthday is more important than going to your niece's, I don't know, whatever it happened to be. But if you did not communicate with me, then it was unexcused, and then we would have a conversation. But when you're not there, you're not there. So you win the Nobel Peace Prize, man, you should be in France for 2 weeks. That's absolutely awesome. That's where you should be. But the softball train would never stop. It never stops. Things never stop. They always go. So when you come back, could there be a consequence? Could there be a natural consequence? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how things unfolded. That's why I don't have a policy. If you're sick the night before, you don't get to start. There's so many variables that go in. A DECA thing for me, that's great. But you weren't there. So I don't know what we practiced maybe at that day, or we'd have people in multiple things. They weren't at a game. Okay, you weren't at the game. So, but you have these conversations with the team. So everybody knows and they know where you're coming from. I had a player, she was a first team All-Met as a junior year, soccer. She's going to go to JMU. Her senior year, she decided she wanted to play softball with her sister. She had never played softball before, but she was a great athlete. But every Wednesday night, she needed to go to Manassas to train. We talked about it as a team. Everybody was cool with that. So it's just a conversation, but I keep it pretty simple. When you're not there, you're not there. Train keeps moving on. But if you don't communicate with me while you're not there, then yes, that's an unexcused absence. And technically, if you had one unexcused absence, you were not able to let her. So
Yeah. And yes, and in Loudoun, in the public school system in Loudoun County, we have certain guidelines and rules about lettering and how many games and 50% participation and all that kind of stuff. But again, Coach hit the nail right on the head. It's all about communicating. It's all about having and you can't communicate without a relationship.
right.
Right. So that's part of our job, is to start that communication. So really understanding that, and that starts, remember what I said about green days back in September and October. It's not for me to teach you how to field a ground ball. That's not the point. The point of a green day in October is for me to get to know who you are as a person. People ask me all the time about what my coaching philosophy is. It's simple. You could write it on a piece of paper about this big. It's the better I get to know you as a human being, the better this relationship's going to be over the course of 4 years. And trust me, it will make a difference on the field. That's it. It's simple. So, that's what this is about. One other technical piece that I wanted to make sure everybody knew about absences. You're welcome. You're welcome, Sophie. Absences in Loudoun County Public Schools. The late bell rings at what time, Liv?
9:15.
9:15. So if you don't have an excused absence, like a doctor's note or something like that, by 9:15, you are technically not eligible for that day per the rules. So get a note. Go to the doctor. If you have to go to the dentist, go to the dentist. I'm not saying don't go to the dentist on game day or on practice day, but make sure you get a note, because that's important, right? Liv, you've been in any of those situations, right? Where you got to go to the dentist, right? You have great teeth. You got to go to the dentist, right?
I used to have orthodontist appointments before school, which I would just get notes for and then come in late.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so we have one other question here that I'm not exactly sure how we can be. So Coach, it's a tough question. Are there politics in high school softball? And I guess, with some players making the team for whatever reasons, right? I'll answer it this way. It's my job to, first off, to develop a program, not to develop a team. I take a very much of a programmatic approach to the development of players, because, so for instance, our JV team has the same signs as our varsity team. We run the same first and third plays. It would be no different than the JV basketball team running the same 1-3-1 defense as the varsity team does. So we look at things programmatically. So whether a kid makes a team or not a team, I go back to what Coach Susie mentioned earlier, that you can't look at a team that someone makes because it's very circumstantial, right? For instance, I had 7 seniors this year on our team. I typically am a small roster guy, like smaller rosters don't want to have to talk about playing time. We want to give playing time. We don't want to not give playing time. So I, by definition, have typically been a small roster guy, but I've got these 7 seniors. So how do we deal with that? I would say that as long as you as a coach, me as a coach, has consistency over the way that I deal with people and communicate with people, then no, there is no quote unquote politics in the program, because I have a programmatic approach. The outline of what our expectations are and how we run and how we operate and how we communicate are very clear with our players. So and it's my job to put the best 9 kids out there. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're a fresh, if Olivia Valbach came to Riverside as a freshman, she's on the team, right? She's on the team. So that doesn't much matter to me. It's my job to put a quality product out on the field, all the while teaching these young women lessons about life, lessons about program, and understanding that the benefit that they can get doesn't much matter whether they're on the JV team or the varsity team. It's being part of the program. We do plenty of things that have, and Coach, I'm going to ask you this question. What percentage of I'm going to answer mine and then you can answer. What percentage of the things that you do in the pie, you've got a pie of softball season, right? What percentage of that pie do you do things that have absolutely nothing to do with softball? For me, it's about 20%, 20 to 25%.
Yeah, it would. There's a nice chunk, a big chunk of that isn't all softball. So
Right.
you do community relationships.
Yeah, we talk about things like, in our particular program, and I know Coach does this as well, you do personality tests and you do little games, and we have a book club together. This season we had to do the book club through Zoom because it's just the way we had to do it. As a matter of fact, the books, it's right over here. We all read The Coffee Bean together by John Gordon. If it's real thin, you can get through it in about 2 hours if you really wanted to. Go out and get this book. But this was our book club book that we did over Zoom this year. And we do a book club every year. We volunteer at the local elementary school together as a team while we're in season. We do the color run while we're in season. So there are plenty of things that we do that have absolutely nothing to do with softball, but they have to do with people. They have to do with relationships, and they have to do with communication. So whether you're on the JV or the varsity is immaterial. Every single kid got this book and read this book, and they benefited from the story of reading this book together as a group. So, so with that, I don't know if that answers your question about politics in high school sports or not, but understand that what we do is programmatic, and that's how we try to model it. And I don't know if I don't know if I've answered your question or not, but Coach, anything else to add to that?
You'll always find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you want to find politics, you'll find politics. If you want to say, hey, maybe my daughter wasn't as skilled, then maybe your daughter wasn't as skilled. So again, whatever somebody wants to look for, they'll find it. So hopefully, that's not to say there aren't things that go on, but I like to say, curiosity kills judgment. So maybe ask some kind questions from the heart, and then you might find out, because everybody has a story, and you would hope that person would want to know what your daughter's story is and what your story is. And then you come from a sense of kindness and working together instead of feeling that there's an adversarial thing going on. So.
Yep, exactly. So final question for our panel. So I'll give Liv a little bit of time to think about it, but I'll ask you. So, part of what we do in our particular program, and I think is a lot of coaches do this, is to really understand, what is your superpower? What is the superpower that you bring to your team? What is the superpower that you bring to your culture of your group? What is it that you just love to give and show to your team that you've got their back, and that you've bonded and you've made this happen? So Coach Susie, tell everyone what your superpower is that you give to everyone.
I don't know about a superpower. I just like energy. So
Yep.
hopefully you feel like there's no other place I'd want to be than where I'm at right at that moment, and helping you become your best. So, but
I can attest to that superpower. Passion and energy is not something that Coach Susie lacks at all.
so what's yours, Coach Kevin?
So mine is.
I'm giving you time to think, Liv.
Yeah, Liv, we'll give you time. Mine is passion to see the positive growth and impacts that are made in these kids' lives. And I try to give everything that I can. Again, I mentioned earlier, I'm not an emotional person. My wife tells me all the time I don't cry, and I don't, but for some reason, if I talk about Liv, next thing you know, I got a tear in my eye. So it's to really understand and help guide and grow these young women to allow them to achieve all this greatness, whatever the definition of that greatness is. And I'm truly passionate about it. And that's what I hope I give every single day that I'm out on the field and with these folks. So Liv, other than throwing a rise ball and throwing strikes and striking people out, what's your superpower?
I think being a good teammate, always being there for my teammates and picking them up. Yeah, I think that's probably a really big piece, and that's super important to me, is making sure that I'm just as good of a teammate as I am a softball player.
Awesome. I think that's an unbelievable place to end it. And unless there are no other questions, three of us will hang out for a little bit if people want to get off. Absolutely. But we appreciate your time. Tried to keep it to a little over an hour, which isn't too bad, but we appreciate your time. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully it helped. Hopefully you learned a little bit about how to prepare for becoming a high school, participating at the high school level. And we certainly appreciate your time. Liv, thank you so much. If you can hang out just a little bit. Coach Susie, thanks again for all that you bring to the group and all the good stuff. So again, appreciate it, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay social distanced, or physically distant. We don't like to say socially distant because we're all very social beings, but stay physically distant, stay safe, and enjoy. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Coach B.
Thank you.